folks. This is Skåne, where I'm from. It's pretty flat most of the time. It's big fields like this. Pretty open, really nice. Right now, when you're watching this, I am probably sitting in my tent crying, having pain in my feet, and enjoying my life to the fullest. And doing a thing called the Green Ribbon or Gröna Bandet. This thing started for me a very long time ago with just brain farts and thoughts, and then it sort of accumulated and became more and more serious, and then got to the point where I got dead serious about it, and that's where I am now. The time now is actually in the beginning of June, and I did this interview that you're about to see last November. It's with a woman called Sofie. Most amazing woman that I've never met. She have done the Green Ribbon, and that's why I wanted to talk to her, just get the scoop and some tips. And that's what I wanted to share with you guys. I'll give you something to think about. She's got the insight. I don't know how to explain it. You just have to see for yourself. All the questions that I ask her, she's got the answers are just on point when it comes to the sort of right mentality and the sort of life philosophy that I think that you should have when you set out to do a thing like that, or just life in general, actually. So for those of you who say that you're hungry for knowledge, here it is. Eat it. Sofie, thank you so much for being able to join me for this meeting a la 2020 over online like this. I just wanted to start with the first question, obviously, and that is, how would you describe what you have accomplished, and what did you do?
Well, what I think you're asking is, I did a very long hike in Sweden called the Green Ribbon, and it's a 1,400 kilometer long hike that goes through the whole Swedish and Norwegian mountain chain. So you start up in Treriksröset, which is like the most northern part of the Swedish mountains, and then you go all the way down to the most southern part, which is Rövelsjön. And you have to do it by foot, and you have to carry all your stuff by yourself, and you have to do it like in one stretch without any like break. So I was out hiking for 68 days.
68 days. Wow. Okay. And what was it that drove you to do that? Why did you do it?
Oh, that's a good question.
I know, I got plenty of good questions.
I actually met some people along the way that asked me the same thing. A guy in a gas station where I went to refill my gas, he was like, yeah, I have met a few people that did this Green Ribbon, but I never dared to ask anyone before. But I have to ask you, why do you do this? And I think for me, it's like I had two reasons. And one is that I'm kind of an all or nothing person. So I'm kind of new to the whole hiking thing. I did my first hike just 2 years before this. And it was one of my hiking friends that told me about this Green Ribbon, and she was like telling me about this, like some fun thing, like this would be nice to do somewhere in the future in 10 years or so. But when she pitched this idea with me, I just couldn't like let go of it. And since I really enjoyed hiking, I was like, yeah, I missed this thing for my whole life. And I have so much left to see. There's so much of this like mountain area in Sweden, which I haven't seen yet. So there was kind of a way for me to catch up for all the years when I had no idea how wonderful this hiking experience was. So it was like, yeah, let's just do all of it at the same time.
That is really all or nothing.
Sorry?
That is really all or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of me. Yeah. Like either you don't do it or you do it like 100%.
Everything at the same time. All right.
So it's just working. Right. And the other reason was I had been taking a break from my job because I was like really stressed out, and I was kind of almost having a burnout because I had been working like way too much, and I had been like super engaged in my job for a very long time. So I took a break from my job for 6 months and decided that I have to push off on the brain and kind of be and exist more like in the body and in the like physical experience somehow. So I had been up in the mountains during the winter in a skiing resort, and it was such a nice feeling to like just don't be by the computers, don't be by the office chair, and just be able to be outside. So when I was about to go back to my work 6 months later, I was like, yeah, I can't do this. It just started to like itch in my body just thinking about it. So I decided to just quit my job and go out hiking for 2 months instead, just to like have this nature and physical experience and just like keep resting my brain and just to find out what would happen, like what happens if you just get out on the mountain alone for 2 months.
Wow, that's extremely brave. And speaking about bravery, what was your biggest fear beforehand, before you went out? What was your sort of your biggest fear?
I don't actually really think I had any like specific fears, and I'm not sure if that's clever or if it's just naive. It's like after I did this hike, I went like to what's it called, like now I can't think of the word in English.
You can say it in Swedish, or maybe I can help.
Sjukvårdskurs.
Medical class, I guess.
Yeah, I took like a 3-day medical class for like wilderness medicine right after I came back. And I also started a training to become a mountain leader after I did this hike. And now I'm kind of more aware of like all the risks there are. So in some way it was maybe good that I didn't like think too much about the risks beforehand. So I didn't really have any fears, but the only thing that I was like curious about was like, what would it be like to be alone with yourself and your own thoughts for such a long time? I mean, it wasn't something I feared. It was more something I was like curious about to see like what will happen, because in your normal life, it's like, when do you ever spend like 2 months like completely alone just with your own brain and your own body? So
I'm pretty sure there was good days and better days and bad days and really bad days. So on the sort of rough days, you're tired, you're hungry, and you're longing to go home or whatever. I don't know. But what made you continue at those days?
That also, it sounds a bit cheesy, like when you talk about it, but I kind of really think that like to live a full life, you need to have like contrasts in your life, like to be able to value all the good days and all the nice things that you have around you. You kind of need something to contrast to that. So you kind of need like the rainy days and the tough days, and you have to be tired sometimes. You better like appreciate like when the days when you're full of energy. And you need to have like wet socks and sore feet at some point too, like, because then you really, really, really appreciate like the days when the sun is out and your socks are like super dry, and it makes you appreciate all those small things. So at some I had some really rough days, of course, but then I could often like just look at myself from the outside and kind of like think about these things, like, these days are the days that are gonna make me appreciate tomorrow even more when the weather is better or something like that. And it's also something that is really that I really appreciate with hiking, is that it's really simple. It's really like meditative and like it's mindfulness for real without having to like force it into your like stressed out everyday life. So like the only thing or the only option you have when you're out hiking is that like you have to go from point A to point B. And that's like the only thing you have to do. You don't have to make like any smart decisions. It's not like you have options all the time that you have to like decide and process and handle. It's just, you just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And that's also really like relaxing and comforting to like have that with you. Like even the days when I was like freezing cold and it was like snowstorm and the wind was really heavy, it's like, I mean, I don't have to like decide what to do. All I have to do is just keep walking like I would any other day. And it's kind of, it gives you a relaxing feeling, like, yeah, I don't have to like come up with all these like smart and bright and creative ideas. I just have to keep walking. And it gives you some kind of a mental relaxation.
Yeah, I can see that.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, totally. All right, so here's maybe you already mentioned it, but if you were to single out one thing, what was the best thing about doing this?
Can I only say one thing? It's
let's try to restrict it. So if you have to pick like one cherry, which one would that be?
Wow. I don't think I can put it into just one thing because it had so many aspects to it, like a hike like this.
Yeah.
So it's both a nature experience. I mean, just having these magnificent nature views. And since I was out for 2 months, I started out in like summer and went through autumn. And then like in the end, I had snowstorms. So it was almost like winter. And just being there in nature and like on the first row of this like great scenery, it's just that was mind blowing. And just like seeing all the small shifts and details, like in the wind and in the colors and in the temperature, and just like having all your senses really, maybe that's the, okay, that's the one thing I picked.
See, I told you.
It's like you have your sense, you have your senses really sharpened. It's like you begin to smell things and you begin to hear things and I feel things and so
I think
it's both a nature experience and a mental experience somehow.
Yeah.
And also the meeting all the people along the way and like regaining trust in in humanity, because you meet so many generous and helpful people that like have time to listen, stop and talk.
I think the thing that you're mentioning there, just activating your senses, because and I think it's so interesting because that's something that we don't know. We're not aware that we're not activated our senses. Yeah. We're just like, now I'm on the sofa, everything is fine, I'm watching TV, and that's it. Where I'm having a good time, you think. But then you start to, or I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody here, but for myself, it's like, no, I'm missing something. And then you start to go out and I don't know, there's just something that happens. So, yeah.
And I think also for a lot of people, this becomes kind of a life-changing journey to like do a long hike like this, because once you get these perspectives and you're like, this is a way to live, like to be this present and to like you say, when you compare it to your life, like sitting in an office chair, like in a room without windows and everything, and you just, none of your senses make any sense. You're just
no, I can totally relate to that. All right, so going from the best, what was the worst?
Like the worst day or the worst thing with the whole
worst thing, I would say.
Well, I'm a really positive person, so it's not like there's anything that I felt was like awful or really bad. I had like some really, really, really bad days, but like afterwards, maybe the thing I regret the most, like afterwards, is that I went out kind of, I don't know how to say it in English, but I went out kind of heavy or whatever. Like I started out like being really, I'm gonna do this. and I had kind of a heavy backpack, and I started in Norway, which is very, very a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And we did really, really long stretches the first week, and I didn't do very much physical like preparations beforehand. So I still have some problems with my knees today because I kind of went out like too much all in from the beginning. So that's maybe like the worst thing, like afterwards, that I didn't like go smoothly into it. I kind of just jumped right in.
All or nothing.
All or nothing, yeah.
We're going to get into the prep because that's something that I'm really interested in. But before that, I want to ask you, it's a single question again sort of thing, but if you could, is there, I don't know if there's just like one thing, but the question is, do you have a greatest memory? Was there one thing that you really was like, wow, this thing was something that sticks out for me?
There are so many different things, of course. It's like a whole jewelry box. I kind of have that like comparison. Like I have this memory box with like just memories that I put into this jewelry box. But there was one day that was really, really nice when I just finished like Kungsleden, which is one of the most famous hiking trails in Sweden. So of course there was a lot of people. That's where you would meet people. And this was like 2 days after. So I just came off Kungsleden, or the King's Trail, and I had been camping on a beach all by myself. And I woke up in the morning and it was just foggy. Everything was completely white. Like everything was just, it had just disappeared during the night. So I just like sat there in the morning drinking my like this crappy instant coffee and was just watching like when everything just came back out of the fog, and like you could see like houses popping out and islands popping out. Like, so I had to make another cup of coffee and just sit there and just watch the fog go away. And then I started hiking, and I was all alone like up on the mountain, and it was like super sunny. And it was just like a magic day, and I would stop like by a small lake where the water was like really glittering, and I would go for like a lunch swim. And since I was completely alone, I could just sit there like naked and like dry up in the sun. And it was like, I think end of August or beginning of September, so it was like this really nice autumn colors. And I don't know, that whole day we just, yeah, it's a good day to remember.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right, so going into the prep, how did you prepare?
Well, I kind of had not too much time to do the preparations. I know a lot of people kind of plan this long hike for years and kind of really do a lot of research and have a lot of time for the preparations. I decided to do this in April, and then I left in July. So, but the first thing that I would do was to like order all the maps, like to cover the whole mountain area. You have to have like 10 or 12 different maps, I think, to kind of set out the route. And the reason I have to do that, I mean, it's not really that much a difference like hiking for a week or hiking for 2 months. I think the biggest difference is like all the logistics that you have to do, like the planning and the logistics beforehand. So since I had to plan food, I had to send out like resupply boxes to places along the way. And in order to know like how much food to prepare and where to send the resupply boxes, the first thing I had to do was, of course, to like set the route and kind of plan like this section of the trail has to take like 7 days or something. And then I have this place to resupply. So I had like a very detailed schedule for, originally I was planning to do it on 74 days or something. So I had like set day trips and exactly like where to go in order to be able to know like how much food to prepare and how much food to pack in all the different resupply boxes. So I did the route planning first, like from the map, And of course, there's a lot of people that did this green ribbon beforehand. So there's a lot of experience to take part of. So I was looking at some other people's like planned routes and like to see, yeah, what choices did they like do. But it's not like set route. I mean, you can set your own like route. You can go like almost anywhere you want. You only have to like stick to the west of some points along the way, which means you have to be like within the mountain area. But besides that, you can like pick your own route. So once I did the route planning, I started doing a lot of food preparation, and that took like almost a month just to plan for all the food, and then sent out this in resupply boxes to different places.
And how did you, when you're saying you prepared food, did you like cook yourself and prepared and dried it, or what did you do?
Yeah, I know people do this differently. I mean, some people don't prepare their food at all. They just resupply along the way. But for me, it felt kind of like safe to have everything prepared, because in that way, once I was out hiking, I didn't have to like plan and worry about like where to find food, what are the opening hours of like different stores along the way, or where do I find them. I just wanted to be like, when I was there, I wanted to be like 100% in the experience. So I planned and cooked all the food at home, and I dried all the food myself, because I mean, if you buy dried food ready-made, it's really expensive. You have to pay like more than 100 crowns for just one meal. And if you're out for like 70 days and you have to have like 3 meals a day, it's kind of a lot of money. So in order to save money, I dried all the food myself. So I was cooking like 150 portions of, of food, just chopping and putting it into the oven and then taking it out. And I was actually really detailed. So I was having like kitchen scale, and I was weighing like the weight of everything. So all the portions would be like exactly the same amount.
Cool.
And I also choose to like make the portions ready. Like usually when I go on maybe shorter hiking trips, I would normally just bring like random ingredients and random stuff and then just mix something out of it. But since, I mean, you have to carry a lot of food for kind of a long time, you don't want to like risk being there like and having a few days left and there's no food left, or you have like ingredients that really doesn't go well together. So I decided to make ready meals.
So in terms of the preparation, is there anything that you would have done differently?
No, I don't think so. I'm kind of I did think I did a good job with the preparations. And I was also kind of detailed. I mean, people are different. Some people don't need like this super structured planning beforehand, but I used to work as a project leader, so I'm kind of a friend of Excel. So for me, that was really helpful to have like this really structured.
And you mentioned before about your physical, when you talked about your knees, would you have trained differently or prepared in that way differently, or?
Yeah, that was also like, speaking of this, I don't know if I was realistic or naive, but I didn't do any physical training at all beforehand. I mean, of course, I had been active during the summer, but I didn't do like any exercises like going out practicing with my backpack on. I bought some new gear as well before this trip, and I didn't even have time to, since I had such a short time, I didn't even have time to like try out my backpack. I like the first time I packed it like for the trip was like 2 days beforehand. So I was like, really, when I was like doing the packing, I was like, I really hope everything fits now, because I don't have time to like get another backpack. So now I'm just babbling. What was your question again?
Like, what would you have done differently in terms of, we mentioned...
Yeah, physical. Yeah. So yeah, I would definitely recommend like that you do some kind of like training beforehand. And of course, I didn't. and everything went well. I managed to do this like even without physical training. But like I said, I have some problems with my knee. And when I went to the physical therapist, like after I came home, he was like, yeah, the only way you can prepare for this kind of trip, it's like you shouldn't do any other kind of exercises because it's not the same thing. If you're going to prepare for a hike, the preparation has to be like walking.
Yeah.
So probably a good thing to do some hiking or walking just around where you live beforehand, but or at least make sure like to not have such a tight schedule, so you can have like shorter stretches in the beginning, so you don't do like I did and start walking like 30 kilometers stretches with a really heavy backpack for like 8 days in a row.
No, I get that. I think that's a really important thing to consider, because obviously there's a life after this tremendous hike too, and we want to be ready for that life as well. But that's a good note there. And on that note, also, besides maybe preparing physically, what would you say, again, kind of a rough question, but how would you single out the most important thing to consider?
Yeah, I would say that like even if you don't have like a super detailed planning of your route, at least you have to have some kind of idea of like at least where you could go for resupply, or where you could like get help or something. I mean like some places that you know that you're gonna pass along the way, because I mean you don't want to get stuck like on the middle of a mountain without food or whatever.
I also, I mean, from the things that you mentioned, it feels like it's really important to have a positive attitude, and I think it sounds like that's something that helped you even in the rough days, and how you regain some energy from the day that you mentioned where with the fog and everything, you really took the time to just soak all that in and get some energy from that. So it sounds like attitude, even when you're talking about preparation and you knowing that everything in one way you have plan it so that it will work itself out, because you, like you mentioned, you were not depending on different mountain huts to be open or whatnot. You just I have my things, it's going to work out. So that sounds awesome.
Yeah, and this especially I think for the people that went this summer, some of the STF cabins were actually closed because of Corona. So like, well, yeah, so for me, it felt safer to like know that I have everything that I need. I'm not like dependent on like coming somewhere that exact day to like refill or whatever.
Yeah,
another thing that I just thought about, like when you said this, is that I also think that you have to plan with some margins, like to have some extra days, and that's like something you should always have when you go hiking. I mean, I did a kind of tight schedule, and I even shorted my schedule a few days because Grövelsjön was closing for the season, and I wanted to get there before they closed. So I kind of skipped a week from my original plan. But I mean, when you're out for this long, there are gonna be days when the weather is super, super crappy. I had some days where I just like walked a few kilometers and then I had to stay in a hut like up on the mountain because it was like storm and you just can't keep walking. And I had like one incident where I was drinking some bad water or something, so I got sick and I felt really bad. I had to like stay in bed for 1 or 2 days just to rest. And the times when you put yourself into risk or you make really bad decisions is when you're stressed. So, and also a lot of people, I think, they also try to do this in a short time as possible. And sometimes, of course, it's like you're limited. You have like your weeks of vacation or whatever. So you have to do it in like a time. But at least, I think you have to have like some margins. Some days you're going to feel tired and you're going to be like, you have to be able to listen to your body and you have to just stay somewhere. And also, of course, you're going to pass by like really amazing places along the way. And there were some places where I passed where I was like, I would really, really have loved to stop at this place and just pitch my tent. It's only lunch, but I would it would have been so nice to just pitch the tent in this beautiful place and just lay here, like, and have some coffee and look at the sun. But my plan says I have to be have to walk another 15 kilometers. So I wish I would have had some extra days to just
I think that's something I for myself, for my future self, I really hope I remember what you just said, because yeah, as we mentioned before, I told you that I was planning to do this in a certain amount of time, and and already I can you can get into this to the mentality that you're not really allowing yourself to 100% focus on this. You're like, yeah, I'm 95% here, but then 5% of me, you got to be somewhere at some time.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I would really think about again now beforehand. So yeah, thank you so much for mentioning that, because I agree with you on that. I think it's really, really important, and I have zero patience, and I never, it's just like, okay, on to the next. But
yeah,
this is the thing, and I think it's really important to allow myself to let this take the time that it needs, and just complete this and only this and nothing else. We're just here in the moment. So again, my future self, I hope I remember this conversation or these words, because if I know myself correctly, I will forget about this. But I think that's something really important.
And of course, people have different reasons for doing a long hike like this. But I think, at least for me, it's like you say. I think the whole idea of doing this is being present and like being there where you are, right? And like we were talking about the senses and everything.
Yeah.
But I also have this feeling when it comes to mountain hiking that it's also becoming, since people are so stressed out in their everyday life, it also is starting to become more and more like it's something that you have to achieve, or something you have to like really kind of brag about afterwards. And I mean, of course, there are people that are like really into this lightweight stuff, and they like trail running and everything. So I think, of course, that's another kind of experience. But I kind of have a feeling overall that people they want to brag like how they did one hike or another in like as short time as possible. Or it's like, yeah, I went to Kebnekaise when I went up and then down, and it took only like 1 day. I did this in 1 day. And they can just squeeze that into their like hectic schedule or whatever. And I also met some people along the way. One guy that was just running this insane long distances every day, and he was completely worn out. He just came into the cabin and was like sitting there like a zombie, just eating his food. And we were asking him like, yeah, but do you even have time to enjoy anything? Like, are you enjoying your experience? And he was like, oh, maybe I will, like afterwards when I come back, I will look back at this and like look at it as something that I did or something that I achieved. But he didn't really enjoy the experience while he was there. And then I'm just, what's the whole point of doing it? I don't know.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, I do all too well. And yeah, again, I really want to, for myself and for everybody who's watching this, I think this is really a key thing to let yourself just be swallowed by this experience.
Yeah, and for me, I'm actually more impressed by the people that did it in the most days. It's like some people, I think they're the one that did this in the longest time was out for like 120 days or 130 days or something. And that's something that I'm really like amazed about. It's like, wow, this person was out in nature by themselves for like 4 months. Wow.
Yeah,
that's a crazy thing.
I think that's the right way to look at it. And if you have the, of course, like we mentioned, not everybody have the opportunity to give themselves that time. We got our families, we got work and all that stuff. But if you have the time, just let yourself be lost in the moment there. So again, back to prep and your top 5 essentials. What would you say that is?
What for preparations?
It
For
could be
gear?
gear. It could be just everything that anything that comes to mind when I say top 5 essentials. Is it
Top
mindset?
five.
Is it gear? Is it
Yeah,
or and what was that in that case?
yeah. One thing that I didn't think about that was I would really have needed was like prepare for the cold. It's like it's gonna be cold. At least if you do it like in the end of the summer. So I finished my hike in end of September, and it was like freezing degrees in the end. And I completely forgot to bring winter gloves. So
Mm.
my fingers were like, I had a week when that was really, really bad, where my fingers were like freezing because it was heavy winds and you have this cooling effect. And of course I had gloves, but not like the thick winter gloves. I mean, I didn't think about bringing that like for a summer hike. So prepare for cool weather. And also my sleeping bag was a bit too cold, like in the end. So be prepared for like every type of weather. I kind of had the idea, or of course I knew that there might be snow in end of September. It's not that uncommon, but I didn't like connect snow to minus degrees. So I was prepared for snow, but I wasn't prepared for minus degrees. Bring warm gear.
Warm gear. But is
And
that
I would also
sorry to interrupt you on that one, because that's kind of interesting. Do you would you say that one would need to bring like medium warm gear and then winter gear, or because I mean not everyone I mean not everyone has 2 sleeping bags or and whatnot, or so would you just say go with if you can only pick one, go with the warmest?
Well, I think like everything, it's you just use layers.
Yeah.
And you can also send out stuff like to pick up things along the way. Since when I started, it was like 30 degrees and really hot summer. And in the end, it was like minus degrees. So of course, if I would have carried everything I needed like for the whole time, it would have been a lot of gear. So I also sent something home, and then I had people send out things. And since my sleeping bag was a bit too cold, I also managed to borrow like a sleeping bag liner from a friend along the way. And I also had like extra gloves that I could put on top of my other gloves like along the way. And for the sleeping bag, of course, you can always have like a bottle of hot water that you can have in the bag and everything. So, and of course, winter gear takes up a lot more space. Like bringing a winter sleeping bag, it doesn't make sense. Like since you're walking in the summer, there's gonna be a few cold nights. So I don't know, just have a liner and make sure you have like a bottle of warm water that you can put in the sleeping bag, and you can send out like an extra layer of like this down jacket or something for the end of the trip if you're walking like in the end of summer.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's something that I really, really worth thinking about. Just and like you're saying, being able to send out gear where you think, okay, it's gonna get colder when I'm at this point, so you might want to switch gear from summer to winter. That's
and
really
of course that might be difficult to plan beforehand because the weather in the mountain is gonna change.
Yeah, it's
and
unpredictable.
it's difficult to say like 2 months before.
Yeah.
But it's good to like make sure that you have a friend or someone in the family or something at home that you can always contact that like can send things out to you, because you're gonna think of things that you miss and that you need. So that you have someone that is like ready to help you out.
All right, so that was one essential, the winter or warm gear.
Yeah.
4 more. What
Warm
do you
gloves.
say? Warm gloves, yeah.
Yeah, and I would also say like to kind of make sure that your gear isn't too heavy. I mean, I'm not like this light backpacking nerd or freak. I think it's sometimes a bit overrated. And usually when I do shorter hikes, I'm not that super concerned about weight. But when you're out like for 2 months, a couple of kilos more or less is gonna make a huge difference. So I would really recommend like this. We used to talk about like 3 for 3. like that you have to try to make sure to have like a backpack, a sleeping bag, and a tent or a shelter that altogether weighs less than 3 kilos. That's where you can like take most of the extra weight off on these 3 basic things. So before this trip, I kind of upgraded some of my gear to have a lighter tent, a lighter backpack, and a lighter sleeping bag. And of course, I mean, outdoor stuff costs a lot of money. So it's not like anyone can just go and buy new stuff. But I mean, maybe there's some friend that you can borrow this from, and there are like a lot of outdoor groups online where people like ask to borrow things, and there are companies where you can actually hire things. So, and another thing, and that's also compulsory if you want to do the Green Ribbon Trail, is to have a satellite phone or some kind of emergency phone. And that's also something that I think is really essential, and that you actually have to have if you want to participate in this, especially if you're walking alone, because if you're stuck somewhere and something happens to you, then you're kind of screwed if you don't have like some way to communicate with the world. And
so you're saying that you had your tent, your backpack, and your sleeping bag. Those 3 items in total weighed around 3 kilos.
3 kilos, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Good to know.
And that's usually, that's kind of the most heavy things that you carry usually. So there's a lot of kilos to take
Scale
off from these 3 essentials.
Yeah.
But then if you're a person like me, then you're gonna fill up those kilos anyway with a lot of food and snacks and
maybe that's part of the essentials as well, just to have that quick refill of energy with food and snacks. And that's something
Definitely.
that I learned the hard way. When I did my first sort of winter adventure, I was like, no, I don't want to eat bad stuff, I thought, but yeah, you should totally just cram that in there.
For a lot of chocolate and a lot of nuts. And
enjoy.
I was bringing a lot of food and a lot of snacks, and I even had too much, but I know myself, and I get really, really grumpy when I don't eat. And that's also when I tend to make bad decisions and take risks when I can really tell, because you also learn a lot about your body and how it works and your brain when you're out like this. So I could also like feel in my body that like now I'm really hungry, I need to eat something, because you kind of notice that like your feet are starting to like you're not walking like really straight and really focused anymore, and you kind of feel that you're starting to like fall or whatever, and then you have to like remind yourself to sit down and have a snack. And also it's worth so much like have these small extra treasures when you're out like this, to just bring some candy or some extra treats, like when you've been out hiking for 10 hours and you're super tired and wet, and you like come into your tent and you sit in your sleeping bag, and I mean that small piece of candy or chips or whatever, it's gonna taste like the best you ever had.
Yeah, I think
treat yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really important. I had a question here. The question is simply, what gear did you use? But it's pretty obviously. You had your backpack, boots, or did you have like normal shoes, or how did you do there?
I went with walking boots. I prefer that because especially when there's a lot of sections that are very rocky, and there's a lot of stones and rocks and stuff. And I think it's good to have like the extra wrist support.
Yeah.
But of course that's a personal thing. And I would also really recommend that you walk with walking sticks. Yeah. I mean, some people tend to think that this is kind of like old people thing to like go with the sticks, or they think it's kind of like not that cool or whatever. But it's super helpful, because also, like I said, I had problems with my knees afterwards, but walking with sticks, it helps because it takes some some of the like pressure off your knees, especially when you're going up or you're going down. And it's also like super helpful when you have to do water crossings. That's one of the biggest like risks when walking in the mountains. And then you have to have like a pole or something to hold on to. That's like really risk reducing. And also there is a lot of swamps that you also have to pass. And that was one of my worst days, when I actually got stuck in this muddy swamp. Like I had mud up to the middle of my leg. That was really scary. But usually it helps, like when you have a walking stick or a walking pole, and you can kind of like feel and like see what the ground in front of you is like is it solid enough to step on, or is it like really gonna slope down? So bring walking poles, I would say.
Cool. I get that. People often ask me about walking poles, and I always have my camera, so I never. Yeah, it's definitely something to consider for this one. I also wrote, what food did you eat? So the food that you prepared, what kind of food was that?
Well, I'm a vegetarian, so it was all vegetarian food. And I actually had a really good book that I found just beforehand that was having a lot of recipes on just vegetarian hiking food. So that was really, really helpful. And I did maybe 10 or 12 different dishes to kind of have some variation. And even though I did 12 different dishes that I was switching between, I was so tired of this food in the end. Even though I did like really different things, like some Asian dishes and some like soy meat dishes, more pasta dishes and everything. So I would say like also try to have some variation, because like when this is the only thing you eat for 2 months, you're gonna get tired of it. So try to like vary it yourself.
And you'd say that a lot of. I'm sorry. You said that you had, or did you have a lot of a calorie-rich food, or how did you do there?
Well, I didn't really. I know a lot of people are really picky, or kind of they look very much into this, like how much calorie do I get from this portion or whatever. Because I'm not that concerned about. But that I didn't really look into that. But as a general advice, it's like try to just bring extra fat. It's like you make a lot of the dry dishes like without fat to be able to dry them, and then you can always like make sure to add a lot of fat into the food. So I would also always carry like bottles of oil and like put a couple of spoons of oil or butter into the food to make sure to like get the calorie level up. And then, like I said, I also had a lot of snacks like chocolate and nuts and stuff to like always have a constant flow of energy to kind of keep the.
Awesome. Then we talked a little bit about it, but I wanted to know how do you plan your route? You mentioned that you talked to people online and you saw their route. So that's maybe the sort of way to do it. Just check online and plan the route accordingly, and looking into where you can resupply and all that. Looking at it now, would you have taken a different route if you were to do it again?
No, I think I really enjoyed the route that I choose, and I went along the King's Trail or Kungsleden, which is one of the most famous long trails in Sweden. So that was like the first half of my route. And of course, there was more people there than it would have been like if I would have taken any other route. But I hadn't done Kungsleden before. So for me, it was also a nice thing to kind of get that covered. Now that I have done it, of course, maybe I would have picked another route with kind of less people, because for me, part of the experience was also to like have all this beautiful nature more to myself. I don't enjoy the parts that much where there's a lot of people. It's so weird. It's like all the people gather together at some specific parts of the Swedish mountain area. I mean, it's 1,400 kilometers, and you're almost completely alone. And then you get into like a few stretches, a few days where you kind of walk like in a row with other hundreds of other people. So it kind of depends on what you're interested in. If you want to have like solitude and you want to be more by yourself, or you want to stick to routes where you have like cabins and you have the opportunity to meet other people and talk to other people. And so I think also like they say, like hike your own hike. It's like what is it that you want to get out of it? And for me, I really enjoy saunas. That's like one of my life essentials. I love being like in wood fire saunas. So actually I did look at other people's route plans, but then I also looked into like, where are the mountain saunas? So I actually planned my route to cover as many saunas as possible along the way.
That's
so that
smart,
was actually my planning guideline.
I like that. That's really smart. Just find something, because I mean, if it's not food, if you find something that you really treasure, in your case, saunas is like, yep, that's where I'm going. I think that's a really smart thing as well. So we're gonna switch over to tips now. So what are some of your do's and don'ts for someone planning to do this? If you were to give some advice.
Yeah, well, I think I've mentioned most of the things already, but like for the don'ts, I would say don't forget to bring proper gloves. Don't make sure not to run out of gas, which I did. So I had to walk like a super long stretch because I couldn't cook my food because I thought I could buy gas along the way. They didn't have any gas. So make sure you bring extra gas, or you know for sure where you can find it. So
that's smart,
and don't make the schedule too tight. Like make sure you have some margins in the planning, I would say. And I don't know, for the do's, I would just say do it. just do it. It's an amazing experience. Like and also this to like hike your own hike. Don't let anyone tell you, like, of course, now I share my experiences, but that's just from me. I mean, if you're a person that loves trail running and you want to do it as fast as possible, then that's going to be your hike. That's what's going to give you the value. So don't listen too much to other people's advice. Just do the hike that gives you what you need. And one of the things that I actually haven't been talking that much about is also like to make sure to have time to stop and talk to people along the way. Because that's also one of the absolute best things, I think, with this experience. Because you meet people like along the trail, you meet people like in the mountain cabins. And in the southern part of the trail, you're also going to be passing by a lot of small villages. So and you pass through villages, and I always made sure to like stop and talk to people like at the gas station or at the grocery store, and I was kind of asking them like, what it's like to live here. And some villages had like 20 inhabitants or 40 or 80 people, and it's such a nice experience to like meet people that aren't stressed out, that like have the time to stop and give you coffee and listen to you and being curious on people that you meet. And I met so much generosity from people. People were like giving me things and offering to help me out with things. And they were giving me coffee and they were giving me food and they were showing me things. And that's also one of the really highlights of the whole experience. And that was also something I didn't expect at all beforehand, because I was thinking about this as mainly a nature experience. But the people that you meet along the way is also like one big part. So make sure to have time to stop and chat with them.
That's interesting.
Meet them.
Yeah. I know I mentioned this before, or we kind of dove into that a little bit before, but I don't know. I assume that on some occasions during this whole thing, you were afraid. I'm just assuming that. But and if so, how did you handle that?
Mm, well, I mean, I had a few like specific days where I ended up in situations that was kind of risky or where I got a bit afraid. It was never like that super bad, but I usually like one of the things was when I mentioned when I got stuck in this mud swamp, then I
Yeah.
got like really afraid. I was like, it felt like quicksand, and I was like, I really can't get out of here. But at that point, I was just happy that I had my satellite phone. So that was kind of a saver. It's like I was sitting stuck in this swamp, and I was like crying and just being like, yeah, this is crazy. But I knew I had the phone, so I could always like press the SOS signal if things didn't sort out. So that was like a really good thing to have. And another day that got me really afraid was when I was, like I told you, it was one day where the weather was really bad and it was super cold. And I mean, my fingers were completely freezing. I couldn't move my fingers. They were like completely numb. I couldn't like open my zipper or anything. It was just freezing. And but it's the same thing. It's like the only thing you can do is just keep walking. It's like you don't have to, you can't sit down and be afraid or give up or start crying. Or, I mean, if I would have laid down on top of this mountain where I was completely alone and it was like kilometers in every direction to any other people, you can't just lay down and give up because then you're going to freeze to death. So that thought of like the only thing you have to do right now is just keep walking. You're gonna get there. There's gonna be a warm cabin with a fireplace, and you're gonna be able to put up your tent, and you have a warm sleeping bag. So the only thing you have to do is just keep walking and like putting one foot in front of the other. And that thought is really comforting because that's all you need to do.
I think that's the a really really essential part of this whole thing to not panic and like you say, you know that you have your gear, you know that you have your satellite phone, and again, like you always knew sort of what to do. And yeah, you were cold in your hands and you couldn't move them, but still, there is no point in sitting here waiting for things to get better because they won't.
Yeah.
I need to act and I need to take control of the situation. That's yeah, I think that's really brave of you to do that or to realize that, even if you realize that the hard way when you're out there is less like you need to have that conversation, that really tough conversation. Like, and I think that's one of the most really interesting things with going on long distance treks or adventures or hiking. It's like you're not just, you can't just like, okay, no, I don't want to do this anymore, so I just turn off. No. You at least you have to go all the way back, or you at least need to find a secure place to where you can withdraw. But you're still gonna have, whether you like it or not, you're gonna get yourself out of that situation, or yeah, things can get really, really, really bad. So yeah.
Yeah, and you have to rely on yourself. It's like no one else is gonna fix the problem for you. So, I mean, that's also like you can't look around and hope that someone else will fix it. You have to like rely on yourself and make sure to make things. And I think also one advice that I didn't mention before, but that is like one of the essentials when you're on a hike like this, is that you have to keep your gear dry. It's like, yeah, because that's like, even if I'm out on a mountain and it's really rainy and it's wet and it's cold and it's snowstorm and it's windy and I'm cold and whatever, as long as I have a tent that I can pitch, or like a buffy bag or whatever it's called, and I have a dry sleeping bag, and I have a dry like what's it called, like a dry pair of clothes. You always have to have like an extra dry pair of clothes. So no matter how cold and wet you get during the day while you're out hiking, you have to make sure like that you can pitch your tent and you can like get warm again. That's like your that's something you need to have to survive, actually. Like,
So yeah,
keep your stuff in
the essential
dry,
gear, you have
dry.
that in a waterproof bag or something like that,
Yeah,
or
so keep
many
your stuff
waterproof.
in dry bags, and like if they get wet, then I mean maybe you have to go to like one of the cabins and put it up in a drying room or something, because once your sleeping bag and all your clothes get wet, then you're gonna get cold, and then it's gonna be like dangerous for real. So that's like, keep your stuff dry.
All right. I think it's time to. You think maybe that this is the hardest question, but I think this is part of the most interesting question. Who are you? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I told you before, this was the trickiest question that I know you were gonna ask. It's like the $1,000,000 question. Well, who am I? Well, I think people tend to put a lot of their identity into the work that they do. That's kind of really much of who we are when we present ourselves to others. We kind of say our name, we say our age, and we tell them what we work with. But that doesn't really say anything about the person. And that's kind of one of the insights also of this whole process and this whole hike. Like, yeah, whatever, I quit my job, so that's no longer me. So well, I'm a person that loves hiking, and I'm an all or nothing person, and I'm a very positive person, and I'm creative, and I like building things. And I'm a person that quit my well-paid and qualified job to just spend time in nature, because that's what I love.
I'm so happy that you gave that answer. Yeah. Wow. Thank you. That's a really good answer. All right. So I have two final thoughts. Number one is, would you do this thing again?
Definitely.
Definitely.
I was actually considering doing it this summer as well, but in another route then, of course. But I was actually seriously considering doing it this summer too, but then I couldn't fit it into the schedule because I had two other things planned out this summer, so I couldn't squeeze it in. But yes, I would do it again.
Cool. And I think one of the most important questions is, are you proud of yourself and the things that you have accomplished?
That's also one of the tricky questions, I think, because I don't really see this as like an achievement or something that I like. I'm not going to brag about this thing. It's not like, for me, it's nothing special. I mean, I've just been walking. I mean, anyone could walk. And it's not that different, like walking for a week or walking for 2 months or whatever. So I'm not like specifically proud of this thing as an achievement, but I think everyone should be proud of themselves for like being who they are. And I'm kind of proud that I quit my job to just follow my dreams and do whatever that makes me happy and that I feel that I enjoy. So I'm more proud of actually saying like, fuck you to the whole office life, like working overtime and everything, and just listening to the feeling that says that I spend or that I enjoy my life to the fullest when I'm out in the nature. So that's what I'm proud of. Yeah.
Again, a really insightful answer. I can already feel that I'm gonna learn so much about or doing this. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm gonna have tons of more questions, and hopefully the people that are watching this or are planning this or thinking about other long distance trail or life in general, I suppose. I think there's a lot of things that we can take away from this conversation. Thank you so much. This was yeah. I'm gonna take away. I'm gonna have some tough conversations with myself here and start to look at things in a different way. And I want to thank you shedding some light on those conversations that I need to have with myself. And again, thank you so much for being there and having this conversation with me and being on this interview. I will leave a link and all that stuff to your Instagram, and that's probably where people can find you. Hopefully, when people see this, they will see all the photos, and I don't know if there's a video that we will cut into every once in a while as well, so people will see that. Is there anything else that you want to end with, or?
Well, I just want to say, do it. And I mean, both to you, like, you should really do this, and you can do this. Anyone can do this. It's an amazing experience, and just follow your heart or follow your gut feeling. I think a lot of people I met so many people along this hike that were like really impressed with what I did, and they were like, yeah, I'm also stuck in this boring job and I have too little time for the things I like. And a lot of people kind of have that feeling, like what they are actually longing for and what makes them feel good. And I just want to encourage everyone to just listen to that feeling and go out there in the nature and enjoy it. And it's for free. It's just, the nature is waiting out there, and it's free for everyone.